I want to show you how on this E30 N54. Here are the shifter parts. We have our shifter selector rod right here. We have our shifter. We have our bushings, our clips, our what they call bitch clips, which are really not even that difficult to get to if you know what you're doing. And then we have our our shifter carrier here, which is the meat of this. This is aluminum. It needs to be shortened from the location of the transmission to the shifter location, and again from the shifter location to where it mounts on the back of on the chassis. So there's going to be a shortening operation here because this needs to stay constant, this needs to stay constant, and this needs to stay constant. So we have to shorten here and here. We're going to do both of that in this episode today. Okay, so when considering the When considering the shifter linkage shortening, you got two main aspects in order to shorten. You got the selector rod here, which is already pretty short. I don't remember even where this is from. And then you have your shift carrier. Both of these things need to be shortened, as I explained earlier. This one needs to be shortened in probably two places. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut these things off, and we're gonna measure from the transmission to the shift point location, and then from the shift point location back to where this thing needs to install back on the body of the car. So let's do that right now and get some of these measurements for this specific N54 swap.
Okay, so I have a flashlight in my mouth, so you really can't see much, but the ideal location here looks to be right around 4.2 to 4.4 inches right to the center. So let's take a look at that and see if I can shorten that to 4.4 inches.
Hope you could understand that. I had a light in my mouth and I was trying to talk at the same time. Anyway, what I did say was that the distance between the mounting location on the transmission and the amount right center in the actual E30 was 4.2 inches. This is a weird ruler. It basically has eighths of an inch. So I basically said 4.4 and 2/8, which is basically 4 1/4. And that distance is defined from this line here to this line. However, this cross here denotes the exact center of the existing position. So the distance, in effect, between here and here is about, I don't know, 1.1, 1.2. So that's exactly the amount that I take off right here. As you can see, I have it defined here. That's basically the red. That's here. So what I need to do is I need to cut this, and I need to splice them together and weld them and then do another test fit. Now I know that this side is going to be longer, so I'm probably just going to end up cutting this as well and figuring out what the distance is between here and then this part here that I need to salvage. And so I don't have to be super accurate with it, especially since that pole has all, you know, it's pretty long and I can kind of put it wherever I want. Oh man, with the innuendos, because I really I'm very interested in putting the pole right in the center of the hole. When you do weld aluminum, don't use a stainless steel rod. It won't work. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Stupid idiot. Okay, good news and bad news. Good news is that it seems like the center is going to fit pretty nice in the center of that hole. Bad news is that I underestimated the amount that I need to cut off, so I need to cut off more back here and then weld the bolt on there. But this is not, I don't know, I don't like this. This is kind of hitting. I might want to use the other piece instead. I think I'm just going to use the other one instead. See, it's just not, even if I cut it, it's going to be hitting up against that. Let's go up top and take a look to see what it looks like up there. You can see it kind of looks like that. There we go, it's better. But it's going to hit this, right? And I don't want this to hit. I mean, it's just a function of the actual shift carrier, so I don't know if I like that. But I do have the measurements, so at least I know exactly where I need to be. It's right smack in the center, so the 4.2 inches from the transmission over to the shift is the shift hole is actually pretty good, but I do need to use a different carrier, and I have a different carrier, so I'm going to try to use it and see if it makes any difference. I did cut and weld this thing. It's still a little bit too long. Back to the drawing board with the measurements. All right, so while we wait for this guy to cool out, I figured I'd modify the selector rod. This guy is from an N54. It's pretty short already, but it needs to be shortened even further. The distance between here is larger than, I think it's about 3 inches, 2.9 inches, something like that. 2 7/8, whatever. I need to shorten this down to 2.5, so I need to cut it in 2 different places, put it back together, and weld it. And that's just a starting point. We're gonna start off with 2.5 inches here and see how everything fits when the transmission is in neutral. And then we'll see after we install the shifter rod with the selector rod, with the carrier, everything, and see how all the gears shift. You need to shift into all the gears, and everything needs to have no interference or anything like that. So let's cut and weld this while we wait for that to cool out. So I mentioned this earlier. This custom poly rear shifter carrier mount is from Garagistic. It is a custom piece. It is not a factory piece. It has some really nice fillet welds inside of there. It's got an 88 poly bushing pressed in with a circlip. Really nice unit. And the idea here is that you basically push this directly on, and it is tight in there. It is snug, but it moves, you know, it moves. It moves where you want it to go, but it's really tight. So it's gonna make for really sporty shifting. Thanks to Garagistic for providing this, guys. This is really cool. I am really looking forward to installing this and see how it fits. Okay, all has been installed. I'll show you from below. Getting into all the gears is not that bad. If the gears are first, third, and fifth, can't get into fourth, and I'll show you why. And reverse is good. Second and sixth, no good. Here's why. There's your answer right there. The Dinan shift lever is actually sitting so low that it's hitting the top of the guibo. So what I need to do to readjust this is I need to take this guy right there where it goes into the rear shift carrier on the body and move it up, move the whole shift carrier up. And I have room above. Here you go, let me see if I can point to it. I can put my finger up in here, right? So I want to actually move the whole carrier up against the body, closer to the body, and that'll bring everything else up with it, and then I should be able to clear this. So let's make that adjustment, and we should be in great shape to hit every single gear reliably. New cinematography, as you can tell, I got my iPhone back in the game here with this midway through the video. And the major reason was because I don't have the GoPro 8 right now. I sent it back on an RMA. I got weld splatter on the lens, and it ended up haloing the light. It was not good in low light video. It was just really not very good because of all like the little pits that I had in the glass. Not good. So I called them up. They are hooking me up with a new replacement GoPro 8. Free of charge, just had to mail the old one back. So big shout out to GoPro. Thank you so much for all your help, and thanks for hooking me up. Link in the description. GoPro is a really great company to work with. The Chinese stuff is cheaper, but they do not have the service that GoPro has, and the quality of the equipment is just top notch, guys. Thank you so much. Back at the video, let's talk a little bit about the comparison of the shift carriers. You have the IX version and you have your rear-wheel drive version. Well, not IX, I guess all-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive version. So let's talk about that really quick. The main problem I was having was that the shift carrier was not high enough. Because it wasn't high enough, the problem was that the actual shift lobe was hitting the guibo on the second, fourth, and sixth gears. That is a definite no-go, and I have to adjust that. What I had recently acquired, I didn't even realize it was I acquired this guy here. This is brand new. I ended up cutting it up earlier in the episode. This is actually from an all-wheel drive version of the 335i. As you can see, it positions it much higher up than the non-all-wheel drive version. This is the rear-wheel drive version. I was gonna go with this, and I'm like, wait, I need to position this higher. Yeah, it's gonna have the shifter positioned higher generally in the car, but it's gonna easily clear the guibo. The problem is that this guy around here hits the opening on the E30, and that's not good. So there's gonna have to be some sort of a trade-off that we have going on here. So I gotta figure out what I need to do. What I would like to do, what I decided I wanna do is, I've got a combination of stuff here. I've got the rear-wheel drive carrier, I've got the all-wheel drive carrier, I have a Z3, actually this is actually the stock N54 shift knob, shift selector rod, you can tell because it's got the little curve right above the ball, and then I have a Dinan version of it. Here's what I'm going to do. Let's start taking items away. What, you think I was going to stick with the Dinan? You think I wasn't going to stick with the Dinan? Come on, guys. Definitely going to stick with this. I'm going to reuse this, reappropriate this. I am going to take this guy, cut this off, and I'm going to put it back on there. I'm going to get this thing sitting exactly where it needs to be. Let's do that now. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, that's probably best, right? So, everything is set in place. That red line is pre-marked for where the rear carrier is going to end up getting welded. But you can see here very clearly that I have tons of room between the top of the guibo. Let's see if I can get a better view of it. Top of the guibo and the shift linkage. So this is awesome. This is actually much better. And now, as you can see, watch. Be quiet and listen. Do you hear that? That's the shift carrier hitting the actual chassis. So I know to hit, when I hit it and then back off just a little bit, perfect. Look where that needs to sit. Right there. I gotta weld that on, get this thing mounted. This thing's gonna shift into every single gear. I'm very excited to give it a shot. Let's go into a semi-boring, high-level time-lapse with mediocre music, watching me install this from afar. All right. I was in the car, under the car, 45 times, at least 45 times, up and down, up and down. Would have been a little bit easier with a lift, but I'm not doing this swap with a lift. I'm not doing it. I have a solution. It is finished, completed, perfect, and I am very happy. Let me show you how it shifts. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, 6th, reverse. Done. Let's take a look from underneath. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, reverse. And neutral. Let's take a look at that spinning Weibo now. Woo-hoo-hoo. Look at that, huh? Let's get a better view of that. Let's just get a better view. There we go. Let's get a better view. Let's get a better view. Come on. Look at that clearance up there. Look at that clearance now. I love this setup. I'm so glad that I did this. I really am. This is a perfect setup. I'm going to have tons of clearance now and no issues whatsoever. Let's do a recap. So this is actually one of the first videos where I showed you more or less that a lot can go wrong when you're doing a swap, and you do need to stop and think about what you're doing. You need to stop and be like, okay, why is the design of these shift carriers different from each other? Well, it turns out that the all-wheel drive version has to make clearance for the transfer case, which is why it's bound up like that. And you just need to really just stop and think. It's hard, but it's hard for me, especially when I'm trying to record everything that I'm doing and do it at the same time. But there were a lot of lessons learned here and a lot of repetitive work that was done. But it was all for the best, and I'm really glad I was able to share this all with you guys. So now let's take a look and see what the next step of this swap is going to be now that we have the shifter linkage shortened and completely done. We've got a cut exhaust downpipe. This is the VRSF downpipe, and it has been cut. Why? Well, because I needed to make room for the lollipop. Now, this is a big problem because the lollipop, actually, let me get some light on the subject. Because the lollipop control arm is in direct interference with that tube. Okay, so how are we going to get this thing?